In my opinion, we should be living in a world where APS-C is the professional camera. That's the goal. And full frame is like overkill for weird people. Micro Four Thirds could be an option, but right now, in my mind, I'm debating which dies first, APS-C or Micro Four Thirds, which is removed entirely from the market, and then it's only found used on Kodak's website.
All I want is the perfect camera. All I want is the perfect camera.
We're actually on my favorite APS-C camera ever made, the Canon C70, 24mm1.4, a little speed booster on there. Okay, it's cheating in some cultures. I got a question the other day, what's your favorite APS-C camera of all time? And why is it the Samsung NX1? What specifically about the NX1 do you love? Not a lot, actually. Although, side by side, Samsung NX1, anyone? That was a beast ahead of its time, and I do wish they would come back, but the direction we see in Samsung's smartphones doesn't give us a whole heck of a lot of confidence that they know what the hell they're doing or would pick a good direction, but that thing was doing oversampled 6K to 4K, beautiful, autofocus, a little quirky, but phase detect. Couldn't beat that thing. Better than this right now. Like, my favorite APS-C camera is the Canon C70. Next best would be Fuji. And we will discuss if all APS-C disappears from our planet like the dinosaurs never did, because they never existed. I debunked you. So here's the deal. For a recent video, we discussed what are the best camera and lens setups for each of the genres that I do here. This talking head bullshit, the talking head in the future, I mean nature, and the vlogging, or slow-mo street videography, or wildlife. So 5 genres that I do here on the Camera Conspiracies Network. And in that, I was looking at Fuji and I was like, damn you, I appreciate you so much. I wish I only owned a Fuji camera. Like, your look is beautiful. And even in the slow-mo street videography stuff, like, that was the classic vintage touch that even my Sony and Nikon can't touch. Although those are usually in focus, asshole, and Fuji never was, and that, it's such a problem, man. The autofocus, like Fuji, you have everything needed to put APS-C on your back and carry it on top of a mountain while kicking full-frame losers off the mountain cleft where camels feast on their bodies. That's the Fuji potential that we all wish could happen. That's all you need is APS-C, obviously. What the hell do you need more for? You're saying you could beat this image right now in a living room near you? No. This is Super 35. Beautiful, as long as you have low megapixel, it's not shooting for the stars with 50 megapixel. Go home, Panasonic. So my favorite APS-C camera is this, but it's not an actual, it's Super 35, even though that's the same exact thing, and it's more of a cinema camera. But for actual, like, mirrorless, Fuji all the way, man. XT4 was my jam. XT20, XS20, I mean, there's nothing else needed on this earth. So it's not the quality of the video coming from APS-C or even Micro Four Thirds sensors that is the reason for their downfall. The reason is because they gave up. Here's the deal. Panasonic went full frame. Why do you think they did that? Because they don't like Micro Four Thirds. They knew people were buying full frame and they're not dealing with their GH5 line anymore. Some of you diehards are out there shooting beautiful stuff, best stave in the business. I'm not mad at you. It's good stuff. Even the GH7, if it was just for wildlife, I could totally do a GH7. It's just, I need the autofocus for 300 frames per second in the slow-mo street videography, and then all of a sudden, I can't do that with you. So it's like, that's really annoying. But if you added that in the firmware, I'm going all Panasonic with Leica glass tonight. I mean, I don't know why you shot for 25 megapixels on a Micro Four Thirds camera. That's like equivalent to 9,000 megapixels on a full frame. I've done the math. It's too much. Like, no one's taken photos with a Panasonic. Not one person ever has. But the reality is, when Panasonic went to full frame, I don't know if this is how it works, but they took a bunch of people out of that Micro Four Thirds office and they went over here now. And now there's less of these losers doing anything. They're just drinking coffee, hanging out at the water cooler, trying to get dates. There's only one woman in that whole office. I don't like the odds on that whole scene. So like they're not making much. There's not as much innovation happening because I do believe they saw the writing on the wall. Smartphones are getting better. We have that Xiaomi coming with a micro four thirds sensor. Frickin' Canon G1X frickin' V1 is a almost micro four thirds sensor, even though the tripod screw blocks your battery door and is a deal breaker. They had to know micro four thirds was becoming less and less desirable. And so we're not getting new things to compete with the clearly like skyrocket booming field of full frame, where we have like ZVE1 is tiny, tinier than anything micro four thirds has, almost. And well, how do you compete? The answer is you don't. They're not competing. Like they're not gonna come with some class leading G1 replica that is this tiny thing, because micro four thirds needs the size to even keep up with Sony's technology. That's why the Panasonic cameras were so big, even though a micro four thirds sensor, like they had fans and a giant body, because their tech is not as good as Sony's. And so like they need that extra cooling even to match the specs of a full frame. Whereas if it was Sony right now deciding to make a ZVE1 but micro four thirds sensor, the thing would be doing 4K 1000 frames per second easily, at least in bursts. And it would be tiny, the tiniest thing. You couldn't even hold it. It would break in your hands. Like bigger than the SD card. You can't even use SD cards because it's too big, the thing. Micro SD in there. Even that would hurt your fingers. So the underdog companies, Panasonic, OM System, Sushi System, Fuji, these are like underdog companies that don't have as much money or research and development teams, and their technology is not quite as good, even though they have valuable things to add to our society. It's not the level of the top three, Sony, Canon, Nikon. Those are ruling our earth. Those are the dinosaurs that are stepping on us. And the stuff that already exists for those two systems is not really that compelling in today's world, where like my Canon 600mm Tony 11 Prime is lighter than anything you can do for telephoto micro four thirds or APS-C. So it's like, I don't know, man, you're kind of in a fringe society now. You're not really bringing much to the table. And when it comes to Fuji, they're the one outlier who kind of still has a place for that special look. But if they don't get their autofocus together, where it's like at least Sony 1996 level, then you're not gonna make it much further. I mean, there's always gonna be a group of photographers who appreciate the Fuji look, the vintage dials, and okay, they can manually focus. They don't mind their single autofocus. It works fine for photos, but for the video future of our TikTok lives, we need some autofocus. Come on now. It's gotta be smooth. It's gotta be good. Did he chop an ad into your life? So in my opinion, it's not the results of the sensor size, it's the company's willingness to put much into these systems. They're not developing, everything is for their full frame setups. And then like a little afterthought money goes into, oh, we could also cut this sensor in half and put it in an APS-C, and okay, we'll give you a budget kit lens for that. And they're not putting much into it. It's not their passion. It's like their side job. So it's like, stop working two jobs, you dishwashing piece of... I remember when I was a dishwasher and I was talking to the dishwasher there, and he was the pro. I couldn't believe how fast he was. I was like, holy shit, things are piling up when I'm here, and then you just like, boom. And he was going to his second job, washing dishes that night. And I was like, holy shit, you have two jobs? You think those dishes were as clean on the first one as they are on the second? One of them's compromised. He puts all his effort into one of those jobs. We're getting the bits of food over here. And yes, I used to eat off the plates. There was dessert. And I'd be like, wow, look at that. They hardly touch that. I was 15. That's how I got rabies. So when Tony Northrup said Micro Four Thirds is dead, he kind of wasn't... There was a lot more behind that title that he meant to say, I think. There was actually, Casey. Thank you for having me on the show to explain my thoughts further. I just wanted you to know I don't hate Micro Four Thirds. I I like the ton. And it's harder to get, but you can still get some. You can get a lot. Just check my Squarespace website. Are there not examples of Micro Four Thirds, Tony? There's plenty. So it's like, it's gonna be a system. I didn't mean they're gonna die and never exist. It's just kind of not much effort going in these days. And are they really keeping up with the competition? I doubt it. I highly doubt it. So 10% off his Squarespace discount. Have me back on anytime. Thanks, Tane. That's what I thought you meant. So it's fine. You're not mad at Micro Four Thirds. So I think there's so much potential if they were keeping up. I would love to have a GH8 with decent autofocus and all the frame rates, and then a new Leica Prime 300mm Tony 4 or something like that to keep up with the Olympus. That would be a beautiful wildlife setup. And then I'm using my 25mm 1.4 for slow motion street videography, 480 frames per second with autofocus. Best stave in the business, Panasonic airy colors. Like, you could still have a place. It's just, are you going to do it? I don't think you are. That's the problem. They're not willing to do it. Will Fuji get the best autofocus one day? I don't know. So what are your thoughts? Is Micro Four Thirds dying? Is APS-C dying? Which will die first? Are neither of them dead? Is APS-C better than full frame, and is that dying instead? Is medium format dead? I was gonna make a joke about my dead mother, but it seems inappropriate. Thank you for the Bitcoin donations. Subscribe for more.